The gentle clinking of coffee cups and the enticing aroma of freshly brewed coffee fill the air. In a bustling cafe, a woman attentively watches a man just a few steps away. What looks like a simple encounter is, in fact, a psychological game in progress. Each exchanged word carries a silent weight, and every pause holds the potential for manipulation. Here, in this common space, the dynamics of emotional power begin to unfold. Today I'm going to show you how observation can transform into a powerful tool in social interactions, especially in romantic scenarios. Niccolò Machiavelli taught us that the true essence of power often hides in the subtleties of human behavior. Every glance, every silence can be a calculated strategy. However, many fail to recognize this reality, making them easy targets in a game they don't even know they're playing. How many times have you felt at the mercy of someone else's silence, or noticed that certain conversations were much more than simple exchanges of words? This is a painful contradiction. While we seek connection and understanding, we often find ourselves in a constant state of alert, trying to grasp what the other truly thinks or feels. This feeling of insecurity creates a tense atmosphere in the conversation, where manipulation becomes a potential tool. To navigate these waters, one must understand that in social interactions, it's not just about what is said, but also about what is left unspoken that has an impact. The curiosity to unveil what is happening in another's mind can evoke intense emotions. This heated mix of a desire for control and vulnerability leads us to observe more than participate, creating a vicious cycle where simple solutions become complex difficulties. Silence becomes a weapon, an indicator of emotional manipulation that few can decipher. The question that arises for many is, how can we protect ourselves from this dynamic? We are always being tested, but the shocking truth is that many surrender without realizing it. Self-confidence may be the key to breaking this cycle. The ability to remain centered, attentive in conversation, and emotionally balanced is essential. With this, influence does not lie in seeking the recognition of others, but in maintaining our own focus. So, you might ask yourself, what are the pathways to develop this inner strength? What strategies can we implement to truly understand and respond to what is being communicated, even if silently? It's this curiosity that drives us to unravel the complexity of human interactions. As we reflect on these questions, remember, the key to emotional and social power may lie in how we interpret the silences of others. The ability to read them makes the difference between being a player or just a pawn on the board. Therefore, before we continue, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I'm sharing here. I am preparing a series of videos specifically designed to guide you in your journey of self-discovery and personal growth. With that done, let's move on. The tense atmosphere in the conversation may be a subtle indicator of what's really happening between two people, and within this charged environment, Niccolò Machiavelli understood that the dynamics of power go far beyond words. The art of power in social interactions is not just about dominating or being dominated, but also about recognizing what each person brings emotionally to the table. Machiavelli taught us that understanding the strengths and weaknesses of others is fundamental for any type of interaction, especially in intimate relationships. This applies not only in the political realm, but also in our everyday relationships. Each interaction is a dance of influence. As we dive deep into the essence of emotional control, we realize that self-confidence is the true engine behind relationships. If someone feels insecure, they will be easily manipulated. Those who cling to self-assertion are not easily swayed because they understand the value of their feelings and reactions. This emotional understanding transforms into a shield against external temptations and social pressures. The pain of lacking personal power reveals itself in the need for respect and acknowledgement, which can be seen as a sign of weakness. This vulnerability, when exposed, generates a vicious cycle of constant tests and evaluations where confidence can dissipate quickly. However, what many don't realize is that without this internal knowledge, they become easy targets in this psychological game. People may find themselves seeking approval, quietly wondering if they are suitable, or if they have what it takes for the emotional connection they desire. This relentless search only intensifies the already tense atmosphere, making interactions even more filled with doubt and insecurity. But how can we break this cycle? By recognizing that true influence doesn't come from manipulative strategies or a desperate quest for validation from others, but rather from maintaining our own center and emotional balance. Thus, the ability to stay aware of subtle manipulation occurs without the need to be overly reactive. By focusing on our thoughts, rationality, and emotional control, our interactions can become more genuine. So how do we transform this internal awareness into practical strength? What skills should we develop to decode the emotional game unfolding around us? These are the questions that pave the way for a deeper understanding of power in interactions. Now, let me leave you with this. What happens when our perception of control starts to fade? That is a question that needs an answer. For this, you can reflect on how emotions influence your social interactions and, at the same time, await new insights to expand your knowledge about this powerful dynamic. How can we truly protect ourselves from merely being pieces on this emotional chessboard? This is the key we need to explore to understand what drives not just interactions, but the very essence of human relationships. This reflection will accompany us in the next steps of our conversation. As the heavy atmosphere in the conversation continues to flow, the exchanged glances increase the tension in the air. The woman doesn't say a word, but her slight lean forward signals that she expects something from him. The hesitation transforms into vulnerability. A silent space is charged with unformulated questions. It's in this moment that the dynamic between appearance and essence comes to life. By observing the subtleties of non-verbal communication, we begin to grasp the Machiavellian silence in action, where what is left unsaid carries more weight than 1,000 words. When he hesitates, he feels the pressure of expectations, not just from her, but also from his own insecurities. It's this mix of silence and unspoken response that reveals the depth of romantic and social interactions. The tension of the moment highlights how often we become engaged in a constant state of alert, trying to decipher what lies beneath the surface. If you've ever found yourself in such a situation, you know that anxiety can be overwhelming. Every glance, every pause becomes a silent test, revealing our most hidden vulnerabilities. How can we protect ourselves from this painful cycle? How can we learn to see beyond the superficial and recognize the dynamics surrounding us? Niccolo Machiavelli, in his reflections on power and control, teaches us that human interactions are filled with nuances that often escape our perception. He emphasizes that true power doesn't reside only in words, but in the ability to understand these dynamics. Here then lies the need to develop a self-confidence that allows us to see what is really happening around us and respond in a balanced way. Essentially, social interaction is a complex psychological game where each of us can be both player and pawn on the board. The key, therefore, is to remain calm amid chaos. This doesn't mean ignoring emotions. On the contrary, it's crucial to recognize them along with their origins. Those who have focused on strengthening their sense of self-assertion become less susceptible to the games of others. In an environment where insecurity can create palpable vulnerability, our self-image can be our most effective defense. Yet, the persistent question remains: how can we truly protect ourselves from becoming mere pawns in this emotional game? Perhaps the answer lies in our ability to maintain focus on our own emotional balance, even when others seek to direct our attention. By concentrating on the nuances of communication, we can decode the intentions behind silences and act more consciously. So, what practical steps can we take to act more mindfully amid these charged interactions? How can we apply this knowledge to transform the way we connect with others? These are crucial questions that we will explore in our deeper examination of the dynamics involved in social interactions. Why? Because as we become more proficient at recognizing these dynamics, we not only have the chance to protect ourselves, but also to positively influence the relationships around us. How does this perception affect your ability to resist external pressures in critical moments? That's what we're going to begin unraveling. The tension between two individuals often reveals itself in silent elements, small gestures that convey emotions and intentions. At that cafe table, The woman leaning forward doesn't say a word, but her questioning gaze screams for more. This silence carries a powerful weight that starts to uncover the layers of human interaction. It's the ascendancy of revelations, where misinterpretations can lead to devastating misunderstandings. As the conversation progresses, the reading of cues intensifies. Each pause and every subtle inflection creates a palpable atmosphere of anticipation. Self-awareness in situations where communication is primarily non-verbal becomes critical. Here, manipulation can become a subtle yet devastating tool, and that's dangerous. When interactions are imbued with doubt and insecurity, emotional weariness begins to take shape. Do you recognize this? Imagine yourself in a conversation where, with each moment of hesitation, you feel the pressure not just from others' expectations, but from your own insecurities. Questions accumulate. What does she really think of me? Am I enough for her? This cycle of distorted beliefs creates a tense atmosphere, revealing that behind a simple encounter, there is a complex psychological game at play. And, once again, the question arises, how can we protect ourselves from this dynamic? Here's the crucial point. By concentrating on the intentions of those observing us, we can lose ourselves in the pursuit of external validation. This hypersensitivity to others' emotional responses can create a kind of silent paranoia, where trust quickly evaporates. And that's not the end of bad news. Weariness appears when we become prisoners of this cycle of constant testing, making interactions quickly transform into a minefield of distrust and uncertainty. So what should we do? It's essential to develop a robust self-confidence that doesn't rely on incessantly reading others. However, this isn't just about ignoring signals. We need to realize that all these silent moments are opportunities for self-improvement. True influence doesn't lie in decoding the other person, but in maintaining our internal balance, even when external pressure mounts. In this context, Machiavelli teaches us that understanding the weaknesses and insecurities of others is crucial, but we also need to balance that with our emotional strength. Why is this so vital? The ability to stand firm in our position without needing constant approval transforms our presence in social interactions. But that's not the worst part. What happens when that self-confidence begins to wane? A loss of control, where charged emotions can turn us into responders to an emotional assault. This dependency on the reactions of others turns into a trap, and this is a setback for those seeking authentic and healthy relationships. At this moment, it becomes clear. The ability to notice what's happening around us without getting lost in the myriad of signals is the key to meaningful interactions. How can we truly protect ourselves from this? This is the question that will linger as we navigate these complex emotional interactions. So how far are you willing to go to avoid becoming just a piece in this game? This is the essence we will explore in the upcoming reflections, the power of maintaining our center even in the face of emotional pressures. Personal transformation does not come from understanding others, but from the strength we find within ourselves. As we prepare for this understanding, we must ask ourselves, how can we create a space of emotional freedom within this tense atmosphere? What steps can we take to ensure that we are not manipulated without realizing it? This is what we will dive into shortly, delving deeper into the intriguing dynamics of human interactions. The tension between two individuals often reveals itself in small gestures that convey emotions and intentions. That woman, with her focused gaze and controlled breathing, is intently observing the man in front of her. What appears to be a casual exchange of words conceals a rich game of power and emotional control. Communication goes far beyond words. It's through silence that the hidden dynamics of a relationship unfold, and there's more at stake than meets the eye. To survive in this constant state of alertness, it's crucial to understand the mechanics behind these hidden interactions. Here we draw on the insights of Niccolò Machiavelli, who reminds us that true power plays often occur in the shadows. Recognizing your emotions is the first step. Doubt and insecurity can quickly take root in an environment where every word matters. Therefore, self-awareness becomes your best defense. When you realize that you are being tested, your reaction can define the direction of the interaction. Thus, observing the other person's behavioral patterns should be a priority. As this woman expects something from him, She may be testing his confidence. She is attentive to every hesitation, every breath that isn't followed by a response. You could easily get caught up in her expectations or maintain your own emotional security. This is the essence of emotional manipulation, a game of subtleties that, if not recognized, can lead to a loss of your personal power. The next step is to respond assertively. This doesn't mean being aggressive, but firm. You must communicate your needs without fear of judgment, maintaining your authenticity. It's essential to remember that when you stray from self-confidence, the tendency is to adopt a defensive posture, paving the way for manipulation. A classic example is when you try to please the other, only to end up feeling drained and inauthentic. Maintaining your presence and energy is another fundamental aspect. In an emotionally charged environment, a lack of authenticity can create a cycle of distrust. The focus should be on ensuring that you replace a fearful glance with one of confidence. In this space, the tension can turn to your advantage, allowing you to perform a control test. But here lies the real threat. When you start to pay more attention to the thoughts and feelings of the other person than to your own, your self-confidence begins to fade. This shift in attention can turn you into a mere responder to their expectations, feeding a vicious cycle of anxiety and insecurity. And that can weigh heavy. Do you feel it? The solution lies in cultivating your emotional presence and being aware of your own feelings. Transformation doesn't happen through trying to understand others, but in recognizing your own reactions and working to stay centered. By doing so, you can start to ignore the emotional test being applied to you and become an active agent in the conversation. Therefore, the next time you feel tested, have a conversation with yourself, reinforce your authenticity, and set the necessary boundaries. With all this in mind, you might ask yourself, how can you apply this ability to read behavior and respond authentically in everyday interactions? How can you strengthen your emotional confidence to avoid being swayed by external pressures? These questions will guide you toward a more effective control of your emotions. Now, I imagine you're wondering, how can you deal with manipulation without losing your own essence? This is a question we will need to explore further. Prolonged silences and crossed glances create an environment where varied interpretations can emerge. When the atmosphere is already charged, the unspoken tension between two people is palpable. How many times have you found yourself in a situation like this, feeling that the other person is testing not just your feelings, but your intentions as well? This is the essence of the dynamics of social interactions, and today we will talk about the collective impact of these interactions. Niccolo Machiavelli offers us a profound understanding of human relationships, revealing that manipulative behavior and power plays don't just affect individuals, they reverberate through entire families and communities. This dynamic of control can generate a cycle of distrust and loneliness that ultimately weakens the social fabric. When caught in such a psychological game, conversation becomes a minefield. Manipulation can create pains that extend far beyond the encounter between two people. It sends ripples through our social circles. The fear of rejection and the ceaseless pursuit of acceptance become emotional traps that ensnare us. But what happens to our self-confidence in this scenario? Imagine feeling compelled to respond to every unspoken question, every silence. This not only drains your emotional energy, but it also leads to wear and tear in relationships. You begin to distance yourself, not just from the person in front of you, but also from friends and family. Interactions become superficial, and genuine connection is sacrificed in the name of approval. This is how the quest for clarity and connection often results in distrust. Not because we want it to, but because we've been pushed into it. The emotional impact goes beyond the individual. It permeates families, workplaces, and friendships. This feeling of strategic loneliness infiltrates everyday life and diminishes empathy among people. The result? A society where relationships suffer, where everyone is together, yet still feels alone. The pain caused by manipulative interactions can transform a space that was once safe into fertile ground for constant conflict. So what can we do? How can we create a space where authenticity and transparency are valued more than power games? We need to turn our attention to building healthy relationships, focusing on empathy, It's essential to interrupt cycles of distrust and to cultivate vulnerability as a sign of strength, not weakness. This opens the door to true human interactions. But how do we achieve that? Remember that it's vital to maintain your own emotional strength. When you become overly reactive to others' expectations, you relinquish control over your narrative. The question to ask yourself is, how can I prevent someone's silent test from affecting my self-confidence? And if you pause to reflect on that, what is your strategy? How can you protect yourself from the negative impacts of social interactions? These are questions that lead us to a deeper understanding of our emotions and their repercussions on our relationships. Think about the effect our behaviors have not only on ourselves, but also on those around us. As Machiavelli said, true power lies in recognizing that our interactions shape the realities of others. So, what legacy will you leave in your interactions? Let's explore how to strengthen this connection further. After all, how can we help each other break out of this cycle of distrust and loneliness, and thus bring clarity to our relationships? The tension between two people is often defined by aspects that go beyond words. In a cafe, where the sound of clinking cups mingles with the murmur of conversations, the woman observes the man in front of her with a questioning yet intriguing gaze. Every movement, every hesitation on his part, matters more than it seems. What unfolds is not just a conversation, but a true emotional game, subtly controlled by their silences and expressions. For those who don't know the rules of this game, any interaction can become a minefield. Niccolo Machiavelli, one of the most intriguing thinkers when it comes to power and manipulation, reveals to us that true control in this game lies not only in assertiveness, but also in how we handle the vulnerabilities of others, and, most importantly, our own. Here, the intersection between emotional power and social interaction reveals itself in every small gesture. So, how can we recognize and respond to these power tests? In this video, I will show you how building self-confidence can be your greatest weapon. When you are secure in yourself, you don't seek the approval of others. Instead of allowing your insecurities to take over, you begin to recognize the strength in your own sensitivity. Genuine communication occurs when we have the ability to stay centered, even when tested by intense interactions. When the woman observes the man, she isn't just seeking answers, she's also testing how far he's willing to go to maintain his position. His insecurity can easily manifest, leading to hesitations that are read as weaknesses. The first step in dealing with this is recognizing that this power game exists. Once understood, we gain control of the situation. Let's imagine the emotional testing intensifies. The woman asks a probing question about the future. His hesitation at the right moment may signal insecurity, but he can respond with a clear and confident statement, demonstrating that he is not easily shaken. Emotional control begins here. If you find yourself undermined by someone else's expectations, the situation quickly becomes tense, and your reactions may become disproportionate. What does this cause? A cycle of vulnerability that transforms into a pattern, leading you to feel increasingly insecure and therefore more susceptible to manipulations. But there's an even more disturbing element to this scenario. When your need for control morphs into paranoia about what the other person thinks, this not only affects the dynamic between you and the person at the table, but also spills over into other areas of your life. Relationships wear down as this emotional cycle repeats itself. Each new interaction becomes a testing ground, where distrust prevails. So, what can we do to break this cycle? The first step is to be aware that this quest for external validation is unhealthy. When you understand that your emotions shouldn't be guided by what others think, your ability to stay calm increases. This happens when you start prioritizing yourself. It's also important to practice active listening and respond assertively to provocateurs. But the truth is, this is just the beginning. What happens when, under pressure, you start to give in? That's the question I want you to ponder. How can you develop a deeper awareness to interpret what is truly happening around you without being consumed by others' emotions? Without realizing it, you may end up being just a pawn in this game. So how can you ensure that you are always in control? This is the reflective journey that will lead us forward. Together, let's explore how to maintain your internal strength in situations where others' control tries to infiltrate your mind and heart, painting a clearer picture of how these emotional dynamics unfold in our lives. A tense atmosphere permeates the air, and the gazes exchanged between two people in a cafe speak more than any words could express. This emotional interconnection creates a space where feelings, insecurities, and intentions coexist in a silent game of tests. The moment is pivotal, and the question we must ask ourselves is, how can we understand these dynamics before they overwhelm us? We're talking about interactions that are often shaped by a psychological game, where true communication lies not just in words, but in the silences surrounding them. Niccolo Machiavelli, one of the most influential thinkers on power and control, suggests that social manipulation goes far beyond what is recognized on the surface. He teaches us that by understanding the hidden dynamics between people, we can not only protect ourselves but also influence the environment around us. The true essence of power lies in self-confidence. Often, we lose ourselves in the pursuit of validation in our interactions, looking for answers in the reactions of others. This is risky. When we become slaves to others' expectations, our ability to influence interactions diminishes. It's a painful contradiction. In trying to understand others, we end up neglecting ourselves. How many times have you found yourself in situations where you felt you were being evaluated, not by words, but by the silence that permeated the conversation? This dynamic has a powerful impact on relationships. Self-confidence, then, becomes the key to resisting these tests and ultimately mastering the interaction. But how do we develop this inner strength? This is just one of many elements we need to explore. Throughout our interactions, we deal with a range of emotions that can become overwhelming. As tension rises, many enter a constant state of alert, scrutinizing reactions and trying to decipher the intentions of others. How can we ensure that silences and glances don't turn us into mere pieces of a game? In the realm of social interactions, we need to critically interrogate them. The insistence on seeking validation can lead to emotional exhaustion. Imagine this woman in a cafe, her posture alert and her eyes fixed, while the man hesitates to respond. Anxiety may take over, and before he knows it, he starts to feel manipulated. The ability to remain centered is what can save someone from this sea of insecurities. And that's precisely the lesson we want to internalize. Self-confidence isn't just about appearing strong, it's about being true to oneself. So, how can you begin to cultivate this self-confidence in ambiguous situations, where the potential for manipulation is present? This is what reveals itself in the essence of the Machiavellian art of responding. By mastering this, we not only protect ourselves, but also become pillars of influence in our everyday interactions. Even though doubts and insecurities are always nearby, the regular practice of staying centered and aware can change the course of many conversations. Anyone can become a key player in social dynamics, provided they learn to read the silences around them. How can you explore this idea moving forward? As we step out of this tense and expansive space with new understandings, we confront another crucial question. How can we avoid being manipulated in a world where silence can speak louder than words? It's a skill that, when mastered, transforms not only your personal interactions, but also the dynamics you have with friends, family, and colleagues. Being attentive to these dynamics is what can truly make the difference between having or lacking control over your emotional life. Are you ready to discover how this works?